Hello YouTube, Mr. Miz here on a rainy day at Dennison, Ohio, and right in front of me is the Chesapeake and Ohio 2700 Berkshire. I'm gonna have to go take a look at it a little more closely later, but wow, is it pretty. Wow, is it pretty. And big too. I'm all the way across the street to film it, but it is big. I'll be doing some more close work once we get our tickets. My son and I are here for the Polar Express. Really looking forward to it. Been meaning to get out here for a long time. So this locomotive is Chesapeake and Ohio 2700. Now when I texted Historic BF, Little Train Girl, Wallie B, and Jake about this, called it a Berkshire. And Historic BF was very quick to point out, no, that is not a Berkshire, it's actually a Kanawha. So what that means, you can see up there towards the front of the locomotive, there's a pony truck, so one axle, two wheels, and then you got four coupled drive wheels, and then two trailing truck wheels underneath the firebox. And this is one of the first superpower designs, actually the first superpower design, or one similar to it with that same wheel arrangement. The idea was, by increasing the size of the firebox there, you could generate steam more quickly and be able to have plenty of steam at speed. Now, as you can see, some of the linkage there is no longer on this locomotive, unfortunately. But these C&O locomotives were very impressive. I actually really love the face. The bell on top with the number boards, centered number plate, and then the headlight up front, and then this interesting sort of footboard with the little cow catcher kind of sticking out the front. But yeah, the scale of these locomotives is impressive. You kind of would have to really be here to appreciate it, but absolutely beautiful locomotive. Let's check out the other side real quick. Also, while I'm here, my son and I are going to be riding the Polar Express, and you can actually see our whole train. But what we came to look at right now is this bad boy. This thing is absolutely gorgeous. And this locomotive actually is the model, somewhat, of what train was used for the Polar Express movie. It was actually a Père Barquette Berkshire, but still very cool. Let me get back and get a better shot of this thing. Well, my son needs to go change into his pajamas for our Polar Express trip, so I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. So I wanted to get a little bit closer and kind of go over the running gear a little bit. So again, here's our pony truck. You can see Timken roller bearings on the front end, and potentially, if we can get a view behind the cylinder, we might even see where that hooks in. Yep, so that hooks into the frame right there. You need to get back a little bit to be able to get the cylinder. So above is the steam chest, and there would be a crank that would work through this bracket here, and that would connect to the eccentric down there. And what this was for was to reverse the steam. It was a way of mechanically telling the cylinder where the wheel was in its rotation so that it would emit steam. So unlike a car or a diesel engine, which only exerts force in one direction, a steam piston or a steam engine works both faces of the piston. So if you could see up in the top, there's the main line where the superheated steam comes out of the superheater header, and it goes into that top part, which is a steam chest. There's a valve in there that looks sort of like a spool of yarn, actually, and that goes back and forth. And what it does is it moves back and forth, is switches up opening exhaust ports and steam admittance ports down into the main cylinder. So if the locomotive is moving, steam would push one face of the piston. Say if it was, we'll just say, you know, it'll push one part backwards, the piston backwards, to push the wheels in one direction, and then it would reverse, the steam flow would reverse, and steam would be admitted into the back face of the piston and then start pushing it back forward again. And then you can see here there's some more of the running gear. So you have your piston, your main rod, which connects to the main driver here, and then above that is the connecting rods, which connects the rest of the drivers. And I think this thing used Baker. Yeah, it's Chesapeake and Ohio. They preferred Baker valve gear. There was a couple different types: Walserts, Baker, Southern. But they all basically performed the same function, which was to regulate the valves. And I don't want to go onto the other side of the locomotive because they've got our Polar Express there, and I don't want to get kicked out and have to explain to my wife why we wasted the money to come out here in the first place. But there's also a reverser and a cutoff on the other side of the locomotive. And basically what this would do would be to regulate how much of the stroke steam would be going through the piston. So again, there's the steam chest up there. You have to imagine there would be a rod that would be connecting to another rod in this bracket here, and then down to there. So unlike a car, a steam locomotive is a direct drive. As you can see, there's your power piston, there's the main rod, and it connects directly to the wheels. There is no transmission in between it. And so when you were starting the locomotive, you would have the reverser all the way up, and the idea being that you would admit steam for the maximum amount of the stroke. Now there would always be a limit. I think most locomotives had like 85-90% was the cutoff. So the steam would be admitted into the piston for about 85-90% of the stroke length. So basically you're using the entire force of the boiler to push that piston, to push the piston out, to push the main rod, to push the main driver, and turn all the wheels. But as you increase speed, if you kept putting steam in at that rate, what would end up happening is you'd very quickly run out of steam because your boiler just couldn't make it fast enough. So they would reduce the amount of steam, and this was called the cutoff. And I think some went almost as low as like 15%. So you'd only have steam admitted for 15% of the travel of the piston. And this would save steam. You can also see just how big these counterweights are. So again, I wear a size 9.5 shoe. That gives you an idea of just how big that is. And that's a small one compared to the main driver, which is absolutely gigantic. Now again, back here we have Timken roller bearings applied to the trailing truck, and you can see here where it hooks up into the tender. Very cool locomotive.